Hello everyone, myself Abhishek MB. In this session, I am here along with my teammates Bhuvan KV, JS Rohit, and Deepak TL. Now I am going to discuss about what exactly virtual machine is. A virtual machine is a digital only or virtual version of a physical computer. Think of your physical laptop as a host. A virtual machine is a guest that runs on your laptop as a completely separate, isolated computer. It has its own virtual CPU, virtual RAM, virtual hard drive, and virtual network card, all of which are carved out from the real physical resource of your host machine. This is made possible by a piece of software called hypervisor, like VirtualBox or Virtual Drive. The hypervisor job is to create, run, and manage these guest of virtual machines, ensuring they don't interface with your host machine or with each other. And why these why are virtual machines so important? Virtual machines are a foundational technology in modern IT because they solve one of the biggest problem in computing: wasted resources. Before virtual machine, we had one server, a physical computer running one operating system for one main purpose, like a web server, and web browser. And this technology allows multiple isolated operating systems to run concurrently on a single piece of hardware. The hypervisor abstract the host machine's physical resources like CPU, RAM, and storage, and presents them to each guest operating system as a standardized virtual set virtual set of hardware utilization, workload benefits, including efficient hardware utilization, workload isolation for security, and an application designed for different operating systems on one computer. And objective of experiment, the primary objective of the this experiment is to install, run, and compare two distinct operating systems, like Microsoft Windows 10, Kali Linux, with a virtualized environment. We will use Oracle virtual machine as a hypervisor to configure both guest under a similar workload. Running a web browser, the collect the data will then be comparatively evaluated to understand how their different architectural designs impact resource utilization, focusing on progress management, memory management, and CPU scheduling. And our experiment setup is this section details the hardware and software components used for our experiment. The host machine details are host operating system, like Windows 11 Pro or Mac OS, and CPU like Intel Core i5, and our physical RAM example 60 GB, and virtualization tool, and software Oracle virtual machine box, and version like version 7.0, and guest OS Windows 10, and operating system Microsoft Windows 10 Pro, and virtual machine CPU allocation example 4V CPUs 4GB. For a fair comparison, the CPU allocation for both virtual machines should be identically. The RAM allocation were set differently based on the variable setup. And implementation of our project is virtual box. First is virtual box installation. Oracle virtual machine host machine. Windows VM creation. A new virtual machine was configured for Windows 10 allocating 7.7 GB of RAM, and Windows OS installation. The Windows 10 iOS file was mounted and the standard installation procedure was completed. And the next step, Kali Linux virtual machine creation. A second virtual machine was configured for Kali Linux, allocating 9.1 GB of RAM, and Kali Linux installation. The Kali Linux ISO file was mounted and the standard installation was compared compared and was completely installed. And workload simulation, Kali Linux. Similarly, the Firefox web browser was opened. The XFCE task manager was launched to observe the resource usage and data collection, data for CPU usage, memory consumption.
Windows OS is generally used for all domestic PCs. We can see everywhere Windows only. We are already installed Windows 10 OS. We are running it in the virtual box. By entering the password, it will open. It's a Windows 10. Let's see the specifications. Here we can see the device specifications. We set a RAM 10.1 GB, and we set a ROM 69.7 GB, and we used 20.5 GB, and we still have 49.1 GB. We are comparing by running the YouTube in the Windows and the Kali Linux. Both we are running the same YouTube application. And we can analyze it by the task manager.
Hello, myself Deepak T.L. I am here to explain about the Kali Linux. Kali Linux is a special operating system made for ethical hacking, cyber security, and digital forensics. Uh, key features of the Key features of Kali Linux is pre-installed security tool, open source and free, maintained by offensive security. customizable. You can add or remove tools or create your own version. Forensics mode, boot mode that doesn't touch system drives. Live or persistent USB. Run directly from USB without installation. Multi-platform. Works on the PC's virtual machine, Raspberry Pi, ARM devices, and mobiles. Uh, Install and run the Kali Linux is recommended for 25 to 50 GB. Minimum required is 20 GB storage. RAM is minimum RAM required is 2 GB and recommended is 4 GB RAM. 4 GB RAM. Resource suggested value are RAM 4 GB, CPU 2 core and storage 40 GB. We have Here we have already installed Kali Linux on our system. Now we are going to analyze the usage of Kali Linux by running the YouTube on Firefox browser. We can by seeing by seeing the runtime of the YouTube, we can easily analyze the CPU usage and memory allocation for of the Kali Linux to access the YouTube. Memory alloca- Memory allocation is total memory allocation is 9.1 GB. In that 9.1 GB, we are using 2.3 GBs of the memory, and the CPU allocation time varies according to the graph. CPU allocation percentage will varies according to the memory usage and the runtime of the YouTube in the Kali Linux. Next part will be continued by Bhuvan.
So we have seen the two process OS operating systems and with their system load, CPU usage, memory usage, process count. So we have to compare these two operating system, which is a best operating system. So now I'm going to see you can see the images. This is a output of Windows 10. The In Windows 10, the CPU scheduling is the most different in CPU usage, and the Windows 10 is a scheduler is managing a heavy load, like 15 to 35%. When compared to the Kali schedule, it is just a 2 to 4%. This indicates that Windows 10 has a larger number of active background services. So, like updating, indexing, security, that consume CPU cycles in addition to the browser. Kali Linux being a lightweight, so distributing has minimal background overhead, allowing the scheduler to decide almost all resource of users applications like for Firefox. So like this we have used in Windows Microsoft. So this is a difference of CPU scheduling, and will when come to the memory management. So the Kali Linux demonstration superior memory management. So it is just consuming only 1.5 GB of RAM. So when it is run on browser, so when Windows 10 requires 2.3 GB for the same tasks, over 50% more than RAM. So this is especially notable because that Kali VM has more RAM allocations, that is 9.1 GB. So here, but used as a laser. Uh, this highlights that Windows philosophy of preloading many services into the memory for fast access. Result is a higher baseline memory footprint. Management. So interestingly, in Kali Linux report, a higher process count, that is 235. So then Windows, that is 139. This is likely due to the multi-process architecture of Firefox and the services run by the desktop. So, however, the CPU and memory data shown that these 235 processors are very lightweight and mostly ideal. So, consuming minimal resources. So, the 139 processors on Windows are heavier and more active, consuming significant more CPU and RAM. So the next is fundamental systems. We are going to compare the difference between the two operating systems of Windows 10 and Kali Linux. So this is the main difference from these operating systems, that is file system. The Windows VM uses NTFS, that is new technology file system, a complex and journaling file systems, so with built-in features for security and comparison. So the Kali Linux VM uses the ext4, that is standard Linux file system, so which is known as a high performance and user friendly environment. So as the summary, both the operating systems are performing the uh, processors and memory allocating, but the more efficient is Linux. Why? Because the Linux is performing, when compared to the Windows, Linux have better performance of Windows processing uh, and memory management, CPU scheduling. So Linux is best for less consuming of memory and processor. Thank you.